we are now into proper Zeraim. We are in Yerushalmi Peah. Now, Peah, as you know, is leaving a portion of the field every year. You're leaving it for the poor. The Torah doesn't give you the shiur, the amount that you need. Right? With Rabbanon, there is a certain amount, as we shall see, 1/60 of the grain, and the poor people can come in at various times in the day and take from the produce. And also, Peah is potter from Trumas and Maasros. Right? We'll come across all that. There are various stages when the Peah obligation takes effect. So let's make a start, Rabbi Isaac. We had a wonderful scene last night on Yerushalmi Brachas, and here we go. So the Mishnah, which opens up the Masechet, talks about the fact that Peah has not got a fixed, a limited amount. It hasn't got a limit in our Torah, not a minimum, de minimis limit. Is that the right phrase? A de minimis limit? What?
Most minimalist.
Yes, minimalist, and hasn't got a maximum limit. So the Torah didn't say how much you have to leave in the field. Okay. Because of this din, the Mishnah is going to tell us various other dinim that also don't have a shiur from the Torah. So, the following mitzvahs, the Torah did not give a finite shiur for it, and within Torah you'll fulfill your duty with the smallest amount. So that's hapeah, which we've spoken about, leaving the corn of the field. The habikurim, and that the first fruits that you're separating from Shivas Haminin, and it doesn't have a fixed amount. You can separate, you can give all your fields as bikurim if you like. Or you can use maybe one grape, whatever it is. The Chachamim gave a shiur, right? They said at least 1/60 of the first fruits for Bikurim. Okay, some say even with Rabbanon there's no shiur for the main mitzvah Bikurim. Anyway, the Ra'ayin. Now, mitzvah Ra'ayin is the mitzvah of coming into the Azara at the festival time. Okay, you appear over there and you have to bring karbonos with you. Now, there's no amount for this mitzvah re'iyah. So, if you go in, let's say, once in the festival, you've fulfilled your duty of coming into the Azara. You are allowed to come several times as well. We'll see that in due course. Ugmilas hasadim, and doing kindness between a person and his friend. We will discuss that. The Talmud Torah and the mitzvah of learning Torah. Lamad Maisam, right? Okay, there's no shiur for this mitzvah. On the one hand, you have to learn whenever you can, as it says, on the other hand, if you've got another mitzvah to do, which can't be done through anyone else, right? Then, or maybe you're busy with your livelihood, you can fulfill your duty with the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, even through learning maybe one word a day and night, whatever it is. Okay, and this how far a person has to go to learn Limud Torah. As we know, there's no shiur, even one word, you fulfill the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, and every word that you are learning, you are Mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, right? That's what we've got here. Let's carry on. And the following things, you get the peiros from this world, but the main amount, the principle, is guarded for the next world. And not only that, you get a bit of reward in this world, but it won't take anything away from your reward in the next world. You get your fruit, as it were. Let's see what is in the list. Kibud Aveim, the mitzvah of honoring your parents, and Midas Chasadim, and doing other types of kindness. We'll see what that is referring to. And and making peace between various peoples. The Talmud Torah keneged kulam. But how can one compare the mitzvah of Talmud Torah? It overrides them all, it corresponds to them all. So we'll discuss what does it mean keneged kulam. Okay. Bringing peace is not including the mitzvah of Gminas Chasadim, which we brought Gminas Chasadim earlier. By making peace, surely that's your body doing chesed, is it not? So some say making peace between people includes putting peace between a person and his friend, even if they don't want it. Okay, even if they don't want it, whatever it is, running after peace. Okay, and Talmud Torah Keneged Kulan, as we said. Okay. The Rambam actually learns that all mitzvahs in the Torah are divided into two parts. You've got between you and Hashem, like it says Shabbos, and a mitzvah between you and your friend, like not to steal, right? Or kibbud avayim, whatever it is. And the mitzvah between you and Hashem, you might only get reward in the next world. But the mitzvah between you and your friend, apart from the reward you'll get in the next world, but you'll also get a purpose from it in this world as well. Okay? Because when you do chesed with people, you create love between them, and they will give that love back to you. You hear that? If you do chesed to others, they will give that love back to you. and therefore you're also benefiting from that as well. That's why he says, you can eat the pears from this world and the keren kayemes la'olam haba. So apart from what you get in the next world, you'll benefit from the fruit of your actions even in this world. Okay, let's go see the Gemara. So the following have no limits. We'll see. The Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean? Why there are other mitzvahs? Rabbi Yama Levi Amar Yitzchok Rabbi Ibi Havi Yasrin Makshay. They was asking. Armin, they said, Lama Laitanina Truma Imai. Why did the Mishnah not include the mitzvah of separating truma with the mitzvahs which have no shiur? And now this mitzvah has no shiur min Torah, right? Again, truma gedola we're talking about. There's no shiur min Torah how much you have to separate. Before you separate, of course, it's tevel. But even one chita, right? One wheat is enough to separate. So why do we not mention that it's got no sort of minimum shiur? Because this din, the truma hasn't got a shiur, is not according to everyone. It's actually an argument. There is some who hold there's no shiur. Yes, you can make as much as you want. Okay, you can make basically everything except a tiny bit truma if you want. There are other opinions who limit the amount. Right, Rabbi Lezer says over there 1/10 for truma. Rabbi Shmuel said 1/2 of your crops can be truma. Okay, so that's why we didn't want to mention it, because there are different of opinion as to how much you can go with truma. Rabbi Yossi said, even if you're going to tell me that there's no shiur for truma, so I understand, okay, we didn't mention truma, because Adam Maisa Kal Sadel Bikurim. He says, you know something, you can make all your fields bikurim, and as far as the din of truma it is, Ein Adam Maisa. You're not allowed to make Kal Sadel truma. You can't make your whole field truma, right? So you can't do that. You have to leave a bit as chulin. So even Mrs. Truma, there is a shiur here that you can't add on to it. You can't make the whole thing truma. Therefore, the Mishnah doesn't include it amongst the mitzvahs that have no shiur. So Hativun, they asked the question, Hare Omer Peah. Now the Mishnah did include the mitzvah Peah. Hare Ein Adam Ma'aseh Kal Sadel Peah. Now, surely, okay, you're telling me you can't really make all your field Peah, or Tanisam, we still mention it. Now, you're not allowed to make your whole field Peah, and yet we mention Peah amongst the mitzvahs that have no shiur. You have to tell me the obligation to leave a bit of the field, that's not a reason why whether to include it or not to include it. So the question comes back, we don't mention truma in our list, okay, amongst the mitzvahs which haven't got a shiur, even though there is a chiyuv to leave a tiny bit as chulin. So Rabbi Yossi says there is a fundamental difference between Peah, that you can't make your whole field Peah. As far as truma, you can't make your whole field truma. There is a difference between the two. Let's see. With Peah, once you cut that first ear of corn, right, the first bit, the first part of the crop, that is like doing the stacking up. Remember, with produce, you have the stacking up stage, which is when the obligations of truma starts, right? It's when it reaches a certain level in the production stage, and that's when the truma obligation starts. So when you cut that first part of the crop with peah, that is making the produce now at a stage advanced enough, which is considered to have a truma obligation, and therefore the din is with peah, before you cut that very first one, your field does not have yet a peah obligation, right? And on that time, you can't make your whole field peah. You do not have an obligation in peah yet before you do any cutting. Once you cut that first bit, now your field has a general obligation in peah. And from then onwards, if you want to make all your field peah, you can do so. So there's no shear for the mitzvah peah. From the time that you cut that first bit, and you're obligated your field in peah, then you're allowed to make your whole field peah. You follow that? Therefore, the Mishnah includes that mitzvah amongst the mitzvahs which have no shiur. So once you cut a bit, that's when you can make the whole thing peah if you wish. But not before you cut it. Before you cut the first one, there is no obligation of peah at all. It's only through cutting it that you have the chiyuv of the mitzvah. That's only after that. Okay? What? Sorry?
There is a minimum.
There is the minimum is a tiny bit. The Torah doesn't mention an amount. There isn't really we're going to see, there is no minimum share according to the Torah. The Torah doesn't give a share. You have to cut something, but it doesn't say what. There's no shiur. What? Midrabanon. We'll see. Now, as far as Truma is concerned, before that stacking process, I don't know how they translate it. How do they translate it? This marech hakri? Smoothing it out. It's some sort of smoothing process. Okay, until you reach that stage, you've not yet got any obligation in separating Truma, because we said that is the stage which obligates Truma. Now, even after that smoothing, Big Kishla says Kol Truma, you want to go then and make everything Truma? I'm sorry. I say you can't do it. Why not? If you want to say all my stack over there should be Truma, all my dough is challah, no good. Makes us, you have to leave a bit of it either from the dough or from the crop, which you're not giving a name Truma. So it comes out that Truma, which has a shim in our Torah, why? Once your produce is chayav in Truma, you can't make it all Truma.
I think the mitzvah is to separate as well.
You have to separate and leave a bit behind. You can't make the whole thing Truma. Therefore, you can't include that mitzvah amongst the mitzvahs which haven't got a shiur, right? Because you can't do the whole thing Truma. So you do have to leave something which is chulin. Now, you're asking about how much is this amount for Truma. We'll come to that. It's a Drabanan shiurim, but the Torah didn't give a shiur for that. But we're saying you have to leave some behind for it to be chulin, right? You have to separate the Truma from the chulin. Now, since the Gemara has mentioned cutting that first produce causes the chiyuv of peah to come about, the Gemara brings various questions, typical Yerushalmi questions, this coming Rabbi side, about the din of that first bit of produce that you cut. Shibaydes Rishayna, the first ear of corn, whatever they call it, which you cut from the field, Ma'al Sheteh Chayeves Peah. Is that obligated in peah? Do we say once the whole field is chayav peah, it goes on that first bit as well? Or do we say since the field only is obligated after you cut it, it's not therefore included in the peah side of the field, right? That very first one you cut, okay? Also, now actually you're going to ask me what nafka mina is. Well, the difference would be, is the chiyuv on the first one, then you could include that in your shiur for peah. If the Rabbanon gave an amount of 1 in 60, whatever it is, if that first one is part of the peah, then you could include that in the amount. But if you say, no, that first one is not part of the peah obligation, then you couldn't include it, okay? Another nafka mina would be, you have to separate 1 in 60, okay? Is it 1 in 60 on what's left? Or including that one as well? Do we include that in the amount that you have to separate for it? You see? So those are the questions, what are we doing with that first one that was cut? Let's see the next question. The Gemara has to give an answer. He says, can you honestly say that this obligated your whole field in peah by cutting it? So before you cut it, there was no peah obligation. But now this brought your whole obligation to come about. But if that's the case, how are we going to tell me the chayeves peah? How can it itself be obligated in peah? This brought about your whole obligation. How can it be chayev peah in itself? How can it be? The chiyuv only came by cutting it. When it was connected to the ground, you had no obligation, right? So how can it be chayev peah? Next question. You cut the first bit, there's this river, it got burnt before you separated peah. Do you now have to go and cut again before you separate peah? Since the first one got burnt, is if you never cut anything, you have to go and cut again to have a new peah obligation or not. So the Gemara answers, we learn from the following. If let's say you cut half the field, and then you sold what you cut before you separated peah. You got that? You cut half, you sold that half before you separated peah. Or you cut half hegdish masha kotza. You made hegdish. You gave to the base of Mikdash what you've cut before you separated peah. Now what you're going to do? Now you're going to separate peah. You're going to give peah from what's left, from the remaining half that you have, al hakol, on the whole amount. So even though you don't own half anymore, you sold it or made it hegdish, you now have to separate peah in the second half for the whole amount. Okay? Now, hegdish. Now, when you, let's say you gave it to hegdish, you can't get benefit. Lav kasarfu, it's as if it's burnt. You've got no benefit from it at all. And yet we say you have to separate Peah for the whole amount, right? Adar, this tells me, if you cut the first half, cut the first bit, and Renisra got burnt, it's not as if you haven't cut it. We say no, the chiyuv of the field is if it's still there. And you do not have to start cutting again to create a new Peah obligation, right? Your Peah obligation is still there. The field is ready now for Peah. Third question, Kila esadehu, you cut the whole lot without separating Peah. Atama, you're going to say, Chazra Peah laborin. Now, the chiyuv of Peah, well, we can't leave it in the field anymore. The whole field has been cut. So what are we going to do? You don't have to give it? Of course you have to give it. So what do? We set up a new stage in the process where you have to give to the poor. You can't give them what's in the field because it's all been cut. So you're going to now go and give Peah out of Amorin, out of the bundles, right? On the crop that you've gathered in these bundles after you've cut it, that's going to be Peah now. It's not going to be standing in the field anymore. It's going to be these bundles you're going to leave out. So then the question is, in this situation, does there become a Peah obligation on that first bit that you cut? Do we say, well, now Peah is on all the bundles, okay? Therefore, it will go on that first bit that you cut as well, and you're chayav Peah, or not? Maybe now it will go on the first bit as well, okay? Now it's true. We said when you cut the first bit, the chayav Peah goes on what's in the field, not on the one you cut. But maybe in this situation, where it's going on the bundles, right, which have already been cut, it will also go on that which has been cut, on everything that's been cut, including that first bit. So let's see. Huh?
I just ask, is Peah not on the field as opposed to...
You've already cut the field.
No, I understand that, but the whole theme seems to be...
Usually, you're meant to do it on the field.
One shiboilus.
Yes.
I don't care about this one shiboilus.
Well, the Yerushalmi is asking, what is the din of one shiboilus?
Why would I care about that one shiboilus when I've got a Peah left behind?
You've got a whole, but does it include that one or
why
not?
Should it include that? I don't care about that.
Well,
I care about the field. It seems to be that it's on the crop, not on the field.
It's on what's left behind, but what is the din of that one shiboilus as well, Yerushalmi is asking? Is that part of your 1 and 6? Did you have to cover that?
It's on the field, not on the crop. It seems to be that it's okay.
Yeah. So the question is it going on that one? Is that one part of the field? Is it no? It was cut first, but we needed that to create the Peah obligation, and now we're back to bundles now. So maybe that will go on everything that's been cut, including the first one. Let's see where we're up to. Native Peah, Simon Peah's comma. We will learn the din of Peah with bundles from Peah which is connected to the ground. Ma Peah's comma, just like the Peah when you separate it, comma when it's connected to the ground. The din is it doesn't go on that first one. There's no chiyuv Peah going back on that first one that was cut. So also when it comes to the bundles, it's not going to go back to that very first one. Okay. Then we said the following things have no shir. We mentioned Peah and Abikurim. Now Peah, yesh lo shir melamatan. It does have a minimum. The Chachamim were the ones who did fix a minimum amount. But ein lo shir melamalan. However, there's no limit to it, right? You can have as much as you want. Now, Bikurim, however, B'ra'ayon, which is the Ayla Re'iyah, this regal, we'll see, Ein Lahen Shir, they do not have an amount, Lo Melamalan, V'lo Melamatan. Not even with Rabbanon, not a maximum or minimum. So when the Mishnah says they have no shiur, that's these mitzvahs, they don't have a maximum shiur. But not to say that they don't have a minimum shiur. Peah does have a rabbinical, not a biblical, but it has a rabbinical shiur. Okay? So let's see. Is to know Tanit, so someone to learn. Peah v'bikurim, v'ra'ayon, ein lahem shiur, lo melamalan, v'lo melamatan. So if someone to learn, minat Torah, they have no shiur, not a maximum, not a minimum. Okay? So when the Mishnah says they haven't got a shiur, they haven't got a shiur at all. No maximum, no minimum. That's how someone to learn. Okay? So he says here, the Chachamim made a shiur for Peah. Minat Torah, there is no minimum. And therefore we say it's got no shiur, not maximum, not minimum. Minat Torah, it's got no shiur at all. So Eilu Dvarim She'ein Lehem Shir, yeah, it means they got no shir, no Torah shir at least, no maximum, no minimum. Okay. Now, Ma Nafik Min Benen. So now, basically we've got. So we had with two references. Let's just go back. The first price that we brought, Peah does have a shir minimum, but not maximum. Then we said yesterday, a different opinion says Peah has no shir, not maximum, and not minimum. So manafik min benen. So what's the difference between the two prices? V'han chad min shishim. Now, according to both of them, min Torah there's no shir for Peah. The Chachamim said you have to separate 1 in 60, right? But that's the Chachamim coming along. So the first price holds min Torah there's no shir for a minimum, but you shouldn't use the wording to say there's no shir, because the Chachamim gave a shir. You follow? The Chachamim gave a minimum amount, so don't tell me there's no share. Now the truth is, min Torah there's no share, but would you use the wording there's no share when the Chachamim came along and gave a share? You hear that? Would you use that terminology? So the second price holds, since within Torah there's no share, it's correct to use the wording there's no share. You with me? So really there's no difference between these two prices. It's what you look at. Do we say there's no share because the Torah didn't give a share? Or do we say, well, really there is a share because the Rabbanon gave a share? You follow? So that's of course, they're not really arguing at all, these prices. So let's see. The man having been there. Now, according to both of them in our Torah, there's no share for the Peah. The Chachamim were the ones who said you need 1 in 60. So he says, well, maybe there's a difference where, let's say, he's separated. Now, think about it. If someone separates less than 1 in 60, what has happened? Is it effective? Let's see. Now, remember, the Rabbanon want you to separate 1 in 60. If you separate less than that, have you done anything? Have you achieved anything? Now, min Torah you have, but what does Rabbanon say? We're not very happy with you. Now, what happens now about Trumas, Maestras, on that bit you separated? Is it effective? Maybe it's no good until you get to the stage of separating 1 in 60. So let's see. Mad or the Tana, the first pricer, who said, the Peah yesh la shir min abaton, it's got a shir below, but ein la shir min abalon, it hasn't got a shir above. So he holds, if you separated less than the amount, Masha Nasan Nasan, what you've given is given. You can't go back and take it. It belongs to the poor. But you've gone and given too little. Therefore, it's as if you've not done the mitzvah properly. And your field will not be exempt from the mitzvah Peah. You've not fulfilled the mitzvah Peah because you didn't do the right amount. So what you've separated for Peah, right, even if you've already separated for Peah, and also, chazav or haisif, you go and add a bit more. That's not considered Peah as far as Maser. Chayav b'Maser, your obligation for Maser carries on ad shah sheyashlim, until you do that correct 1 in 60. You're not going to get your Maser exemptions on that Peah aspect until you manage to reach that stage of 1 in 60. You see, when you go and fulfill the correct amount, like the Chachamim said, then the produce that you separated for Peah will be potter from Maser. But it's only when you reach that stage and not before. So that's what one Tana holds. That look, the Rabbanon gave you a share, 1 in 60. You do less than that, we're not giving you a Maser exemption until you reach that stage. Let's see the other opinion. Ma'adam, the one of the second rice who holds, HaPeah b'Bikurim Marayan, Ein lahem shir. They have no shir. Lo min abalon, lo min abaton, not above, not below. Masha Nasan, what you separated for Peah was effective. Kvar nifta, that part, that element is exempt from Peah. What you separated is potter from Maser. Because after all, the Torah did. you've fulfilled. Then, I should have brought a drink. I'll be fine. You go then and add a bit more Peah to make up the amount. What you've added is not Peah. You've already fulfilled your obligation of Peah. You want to go and add on more. You have to separate Maser on that, because you've already fulfilled your duty with that first Peah separation. What you added later, you didn't need to do. Therefore, it will be Chaim Maestros on that second amount. Now, even though even though midrabanan you really should be making up the amount, we will not give you the exemption of Maseh on that extra because you fulfilled your mitzvah with the first separation. And whatever you add is chayav b'maseh. Okay? Right. Now, the Gemara is going to have the question, why the Mishnah didn't include the mitzvah of Truma amongst the mitzvahs which don't have a shiur. We asked that, we discussed that. So now, the question is, other mitzvahs which are not included in the Mishnah. Boy, he asked, why do we not learn Afar Saita? The earth, the dirt, the earth which we mix with the water, which we give the Saita to drink. There's no limit to how much you need to put in the water. But why do we not learn Efer Para? The ashes of the paraduma which we mix with water. I mean, there's no shear to the amount of ashes you can mix together. But why do you not learn the Reik Yavama, the saliva of the woman who's the Yavama, who does chalitza to spit before the Yavam? There's no shear of 7.8 milliliters or anything like that, right? Why not mention it? But why do we not learn Dam Sipa Shamatzara, the blood of a bird of Matzara, which you can get in an earthenware vessel which has got water, and you mix it in? There's no shear to the amount of blood that can be received in the keli. Okay? When the Matzara is healed, he begins his purification through sprinkling. 2 birds are brought. One of them is slaughtered in a way that the blood is received in a kli cheres, where there's water from a mayan. Okay? And after that, we sprinkle the mixture on the Matzara. There's no shear for the amount of blood that has to come from the bird into the water. Okay? With the saliva, of course, there's machlokes if with this bubbly, the Gemara discusses is that the blood has to be noticeable in the water or not. Okay. So the Gemara answers, well, why do we mention it? So the Gemara says, we only want to mention things where when you do more, you're increasing the mitzvah by doing more. Whereas these 4 mitzvahs we mentioned, you can add on more if you like, but mitzvah, there's no extra mitzvah for adding on more. We said Ra'ayan is the mitzvah of Re'iyah, of coming to be seen in the Azara at the festival time. Now, what does it mean it hasn't got a shield? Masnis and B'riyas Panim. We're talking about when you come in the Azara, that if you come in the Azara once on the Regel, you fulfill your duty, and you're allowed to come more often. Ava B'riyas Carbon, when it comes to the mitzvah that you mustn't come empty-handed, you have to bring a carbon with you, and a carbon Re'iyah, Yesh lo shiur. There is an amount for that carbon. You have to spend a certain amount of money. Okay? The Chachamim had a kabbalah. There were 2 kabbalahs you have to bring, right? Olas Re'iyah and Shamei Chagiga. Right? One of them has to be worth a mar kesef, and the other one 2 mar kesef. There's machlokes Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, which one's which, right? Beis Shammai held Olas Re'iyah has to be 2 mar, Chagiga is 1 mar. Beis Hillel said Olas Re'iyah has to be at least 1 mar, the Olas Re'iyah, which you're not going to eat, has to be worth less, and the Chagiga, where you'll eat from it, that's worth 2 mar. So that's what we're talking about. So with that has a shear, right? So when we said there's no shear, it's about you coming. And that fits in like what Rabbi Yochanan said, mar kesef and shtei kesef, which it says Olas Re'iyah, common Chagiga, that is the din of the Torah. So when we said Riyas carbon, there is a shear from the Torah which you can't have less. So when the Mishnah said Riyah, it refers to you coming. Tana, there's another opinion now. Rabbi Yasser, Rabbi Yochanan, he learned Riyah when you and Midin Torah carbon can be worth even kosher, the smallest amount. Chachamim ain't shamar mar kesef v'shtei kesef. These were Chachamim shiurim. This is not the Torah. The Torah did. It doesn't matter what it's worth. Came in our Torah, there's no shield for the carbon. That's what he wants to say. Amalei, Rabbi Yechon said, Yesh Keidzu. Is that true? That mitzvah, the Torah didn't give a share, and the Chachamim give a share? The Torah said nothing, and the Chachamim give a share? Rabbi Yaina said, the Chachamim always gave shiurim. Kazayis min amei. So Kazayis from the dead is mitzameh, not less than that. Kazayis min anavela, right? Kazayis from a dead animal is mitzameh, but touching masa maga kadosha min asheretz, right? The lentil size, the barley size of a sheretz, whatever it is mitzameh b'maga, right? Not less than that. So all these shiurim are not written in the Torah, and the Chachamim were the ones who gave shiurim. But the Torah just mentions the din. Right? The Chachamim are the ones who decide how much. Now, the truth is, Rabbi Yochanan holds all shiurim in the Torah are halacha l'Moshe Sinai, actually, and it's not the Chachamim who set up these shiurim. So, I mean, what are you saying from shiurei Tuma here? Oh, the Chachamim can be koveya the shiurim, but no, it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. They're not really through the Chachamim at all. So, some want to say the shiur Tuma. The mashmais in the Mishnah, the Chachamim set them up. They're not halacha Moshe Sinai. It seems to imply that they're not halacha Moshe Sinai. He brings rayas from Kalim. It sounds like the Chachamim were the one who gave the shiurim. So Rabbi Yonah wants to say from these shiurim, the Chachamim have a koyach to be kaveya the shiurim for mitzvah Torah. There's a whole question whether Bavli Yerushalmi argue over that point. Okay, so what we got here? So he says all the shiurim, the Chachamim are the ones who gave the shir. Rabbi Yochanan's not asking his question on that. That which Rav Oshia learned. From here we learn din Torah afilu kosher. You can have a carbon worth anything. But they were the ones who said mar kesef shtei kesef. No, it should be worth a certain amount. So now Rabbi Yochanan asks, Minzu samach ledvar Torah, from the word rekam. I mean, the Tana is learning. The Torah says you don't have to. It doesn't have to be worth anything, right? There's no shiur at all. Hu amar shechachamim amru mar kesef shtei kesef. The Torah says rekam, and yet you're telling me the chachamim give an amount. I mean, okay, the Torah allowed the chachamim to fix a share, but that's mitzvahs that the Torah maybe didn't give a share. But these karbonos, the Torah clearly said there is no share, right? Rekam, even a carbon, anything, wherever it is. So how can the Chachamim give a share against the pasuk, which sounds like it doesn't have to have a share? So our Rav Yossi, the Gemara discusses now the machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Rav Oshia. Our Rav Yossi, Rabbi Yochanan kedate. Yochanan according to his reason. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, he said, Kol shiurim halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Right? All the shiurim are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Do Amar, so he's telling me that Mar Kesef and Shtei Kesef, these two amounts for karbonos, this opinion wants to say Devar Torah. They are from the Torah. We're calling halacha l'Moshe Sinai from the Torah as opposed to the Rabbanon. So he says here, until now we understood Rav Yochanan wasn't happy with the fact that these shiurim and chagiga and so on is Rabbanon. Other mitzvahs Rav Yochanan want to argue and so on, whatever. Maybe you would say, look, even according to you hold shir mitzvahs Rabbanon, you have to agree karbonos must be from Sinai. The Torah clearly says they have no shiur. So how are you going to tell me the Chachamim gave a shiur? But it could be he himself held that all shiurim, even mitzvahs of the Torah didn't give a shir. Maybe they're still given at Sinai. Maybe he held that they were halacha Moshe Sinai himself. So what have we got here? Rav Oshia said the share of karbonos is through the Chachamim. Kedatei, like his view, Rav Oshia Amar, he said, Ha'echel isu bizman hazeh. Listen to this. He says, look, if you by mistake eat something which is forbidden nowadays, you know what? Write it down. Write it down exactly what size it was, what weight it was. Write it down. Why? Because if you merit, and the Beis Mikdash will be built in your day, you'll bring a carbon chatas. Now, it's no good to say, I will bring a chatas, because what did you eat? Who knows? Maybe the amount of a kazayis will change over time. And what you ate might not be the right amount going forward for a kazayis. So, you should write down the size, the weight, whatever it is, volume of the food that you ate. Because we're worried, a new Beis Din will come along, change the shiurim, like the Chazon Ish in a way. The new Beis Din will come along, change the shiurim, and by you writing it down, you'll be able to work out what shir you ate. Do you have to bring a chatos or not? Okay, it could be the new Beis Din will make the shir larger of chaylev, whatever it is, and it'll come out that based on the new Beis Din, you don't have to bring a chatos. Now, the Gemara carries on to discuss Rav Yochanan's view, who holds that the shiurim of Mar Kesef, Shtei Kesef, Kom Chagiga were said at Sinai. Amri, they said, Chazabei Rav Yochanan ben Hadar. Rav Yochanan changed his mind. In the end, he agreed to Rav Oshia that these shiurim of the karbonos were actually set up by the Chachamim, not from Sinai. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Amrin, but they said, Lai Chazabei. No, Rabbi Yochanan never changed his mind. So the question is whether they changed their mind. Did Rabbi Yochanan change his mind to say that these shiurim were from Chachamim or not? So the Gemara brings the support to the second opinion that Rav Yochanan did not change his mind. But from the following you see, Rav Yochanan did not change his mind. So our Rav said Shem Rabami is Palgud. Chizkiya Rav Yochanan. We have Machlokes. Chizkiya Amar. Now Chizkiya said, Adam Cholek es Chovasai. Now imagine you have 2 mar kesef to bring a chagiga offering. Okay? So now this opinion, Chizkiya says, if you have 2 mar kesef and to bring your chagiga offering, what happens if it's a tiny animal? So you know what he says you can do? Shtei behemos. You can buy 2 animals, 1 mar each. Yes, you have to spend 2 mar kesef. It doesn't have to be on 1 animal. It can be on 2 animals. But the other opinion says, Rav Yochanan Amar, Rav Yochanan said, Ein adam cholek chavasei l'shtei behemos. No, 2 mar has to be 1 animal. You can't split it onto 2. Ella, but if you want to bring 2 animals, what must you do? You have to have 2 mar l'chol achas v'achas. Each animal has to be worth at least 2 mar. You hear that? So what have we got? Chizkiya said you can have 2 mar, 2 animals. Rabbi Yochanan says 2 mar must be on each animal. Okay? Now what do we get from that? The fact that you cannot bring a chagiga worth less than 2 mar, he must hold that the share of 2 kesef for chagiga is from the Torah. That's why he doesn't allow you to start splitting it onto 2 animals. 2 mar must be 1 animal. You want to have more, get more. But 2 mar must be from the Torah. That's why he wants to put it on 1 animal. Okay, don't buy an animal worth less than that amount. If you hold that the share of 2 kesef is only drabanan, well, if it's only rabbinical, then the Chachamim wouldn't really care if you buy 1 animal or you buy 2 animals. What difference does it make? You've spent the money of 2 mar, and that's fine. You follow? So that's why he wants to say, the father of Yochanan seems to say you must have 1 animal with your 2 mar, seems to imply that it must be a biblical share and not something from the Chachamim. Okay. I think we will stop here. I should have bought you.
So that was